Hey everyone, Bandit here. Welcome back to the channel. We're back in Microsoft Flight Simulator and we're going to do another preview of the Citation Longitude Avionics Aircraft Update 1 Beta. Should be out later this month, January 2023. We're here in Ottawa today and we're going to just do some circuits in Ottawa. So we're going to take off here on the standard SID, level up 5,000 and go right into an approach, and then we'll focus on the missed approach procedures today and then come around for a second approach. So if you want to practice doing approaches, this setup will show you kind of how to make that happen. Not a bad day here in Ottawa. It's just late afternoon and just partly cloudy. Winds are out of the east, northeast, and we're going to be doing approaches to runway 7. So without further ado, let's hop in the airplane and get things started up and on our way. Before we get going, if you're new to the channel, take the time, hit that subscribe button, sign up for notifications, hit that bell, and you'll be notified when I put out a video in the future. Anyway, thanks for joining me, and let's get going. Okay, we're here in the cockpit, and we'll get rid of the yoke here. We'll go through the checklist here. We'll put the standby power switch. We'll test it and turn it on. And there's our standby power indicator. Battery buttons will both push on. Let it power up. Check our CAS messages when they come up. And we've got discharge on the batteries, and we're not going to use external power. We're just going to go right into starting the APU. We'll check our hydraulic and oxygen system, so we can do that on the aircraft system page, synoptics, summary, and hydraulic fluids are good, and oxygen system is good. APU, we'll hit start. Caution. And we can just watch the APU wind up over here. Got RPM, EGT, light off, and it should automatically switch to the APU gen. If not, then we'll reset it and then turn it on. Going to turn up the floodlights just because it's a little dark in the cockpit here, so might as well turn those up full bright. Some of these knobs are hard to see if you don't turn them up. Okay, APU is good. We'll check the status of the APU, and it's showing 39% load, and that looks good. And we've got our battery discharge gone away, so that looks good as well. Okay, we've got a pre-flight there, so most things have passed. We still got a few things to go through, stabilizer trim and flaps, so we'll check that before we taxi out. Okay, so for this trip today, when we're departing Ottawa and staying right in the circuit here, so easy flight plan to do. All we're going to do is go back to flight plan, add origin, CYOW. And destination, CYOW again. Okay, we're just going to do the procedure. We're just going to do the Ottawa for departure is the only SID here off of runway 7. No transition, and just runway heading, manual sequence up to 5,000 feet. So we'll just load that. And we can load our approach once we get in the air. We can even load it now on the ground. We can anticipate doing the RNAV Yankee 07 by Novux. So we can load that in on the ground here before we go. Approach RNAV Yankee 07 Novux, and we'll just load that approach. Okay, so you see our flight plan here. We got departing Ottawa, runway heading, manual sequence, and then we got the approach via Novux in there. And if we range out on that, you can see. So there's the departure, and then there's the approach coming right back. Okay, so that's good. That's all we need for our flight plan today. back, we'll check the weather. Ottawa, the latest weather. And we got winds 033 at 7 knots, 10 miles visibility. Just some few clouds at 10,000 feet. And the altimeter is 2985, so we'll set that. So 2985 set. So that's our weather. Now we'll go do our weight and balance. And we'll do our perf, weight, operating weight. We've got 2 pilots, payload, a couple packs coming with us, 100 pounds of cargo. And we just have the 50% fuel, so we'll just sink that fuel, lots of gas. And we'll go back and do our takeoff data. So Ottawa runway 7, weather, we'll just load the METAR winds and use the relative air temperature, 2 degrees. Runway 7, just under 8,000 feet. Looks good. Takeoff configuration will be flaps 1, anti-ice off, reverser stowed, rolling takeoff. I'll just put yes today. And takeoff data. And so we need 3668. And we'll accept those speeds. And there we go. Our no V speed is gone, and we're good to go. For the departure, we'll put up the FMS source. The SID, and I'll just brief the SID here real quick, is just runway heading 071 for jets up to 5,000 feet. So we'll put in 5,000 feet in our altitude selector and our heading bug on 071. Good. Okay, so that's all loaded to go. And so let's continue on with our checklist there. So APU gen is on. Flight controls we can check. We'll check those actually after we start because the rudder boost is not enabled. Trims are in the green. Stab is going to look at the chart. It's going to be about -5. And they're all in the green. Trims are set. Fuel quantity, CG is set. Autopilot, engage and then disengage. So we'll engage the autopilot. And we got our autopilot, just roll a pitch, and we'll disengage and autopilot. We'll get rid of our flight director for now. Okay, before start checklist, parking brake is set. Wheel chocks removed, doors are closed. Passenger briefing will say is completed. Seatbelts, we'll turn them on. Leave them on for the whole flight. CAS we'll check. And we got, looks like normal CAS messages at this time. We'll put on our recog light, anti-collision, and we're clear to start. So throttles are both at idle. And it's clear on the right, clear on the left. And we'll start the right engine. Select run. And engage the starter. Looking for a start indication. Here we have light off. T's and P's are looking good. Again, the fuel flow a little bit late. Should stabilize around 18% with starter cutout. And we have starter cutout. T's and P's are looking good. Stable on 2. We'll start number 1. And got the N2 rotation, about 20%. Should get a light off. There we go. T's and P's are coming up. Looks like a good start. Starter cutout. T's and P's are all good. Stable on number 1. And you can see our generators, left and right generators have taken a load. APU is still on, so we'll turn off the APU generator. Now the 2 left engine generators are taking a load, and we'll shut off the APU. Okay, APU is off, so that looks good. Before taxi checklists, flight controls, we'll check those now. So we'll go down to our synoptics page, get our flight controls, and we'll check our rudder right, rudder left, pitch up, pitch down, aileron left, aileron right, speed brakes. And again, there's still that bug where it only gives you half deflection in the speed brakes on the axis. You can actually go down and physically grab this is only if you're using a control to control the axis, but you can actually move it all the way with your, you grab it with the mouse here. So if you do need the full speed brakes, you can just do it manually that way. And flaps. And flaps are full. Flaps position 2 and 1 for takeoff. For some reason my stab trim reset. Gonna go back to 5. There we go. Okay, so before taxi checklist, flight controls are checked, APU is off, speed brakes are checked and retracted. Flight instruments will check on the taxi, and ice protection, everything is normal on the ground here. Shouldn't need any ice protection today. Maybe once we get up in the circuit, we'll look at that when we get there. Okay, so we're ready to taxi. Before we get going, I'm just going to go over, I had that issue last flight where I couldn't select which pane these MFD controlled input devices controlled. And the reason for that I was able to figure out was, if you look down here, you see this switch here controls the blue pane window, and this one controls the pink or the magenta pane window. And these are actually switches like little joysticks. They toggle left and right. So in order for me to toggle them, I had to switch from the mouse control function of legacy to lock mode. And you do that in your settings here, and I'll just show you real quick here. So you just go to your settings, general options under accessibility, and you got the cockpit interaction system. And I usually use legacy, and it only works in lock mode to use those rocker switches. So that's what I'm going to use for this plane. I prefer legacy, and that's why you get the little blue highlight every time I select over a knob here. So now you see you got your magenta and you got your pink. So right now this pink window is highlighted pink around this window right here. So this is the pink pane. So anything I do here on this panel is going to control what's displayed on this pane here. So I'm going to leave it at traffic right there. If I take this and move it over, and I toggle it like a little toggle there, now it's changed over here. So now I can change to different functions over here. So I had the map mode. I had to set up the way I liked it. And this blue pane now controls this middle pane here. You can also use the split mode here if you want to go to full screen, and then these now control, you have your map settings over here. If you go PFD map settings, and you can control your insert map, what you have displayed there. But as soon as you go to split screen, the insert map goes away, and now you're in split screen. This one here always controls the range for the split screen on the PFD. And then you can now, if you want to cycle, you can move either one of these. So I can move now the blue over to the PFD to change what the settings are on the PFD. But I'm just going to leave them here for these two, because this one here, I'm just going to leave it in this fixed setting. I can control the range up here, so I'm just going to leave it like that. Anyway, that's how that works. So if you have any problems with that, make sure you switch to lock mode in the accessibility sections, and that should work for you. Okay, so I think we're ready to taxi, and we'll head out, and then we just have our before takeoff checklist. So we're going to do the sit up to 5,000 feet runway heading, and then we're going to go right into the approach. And I might as well brief the approach on the ground here while we're here. So it will be the RNAV approach, runway 7, and we're going to do it via Novux. So we're going to be taking off runway 5, and there'll be a right turn direct Novux, and at 5,000 feet, and that's the altitude we're going to be at, mandatory 210 knots. And then we're going to follow that LNAV track. So the approach is going to be final approach course 071. The FAF is at 1,700 feet, which is a MOBI. down to decision altitude of 769 feet. We'll put that in. Airport elevation is 377, and the missed approach is climb straight ahead to 3,000 to Tefley and hold as published max holding speed 230 knots. So that's the approach we're going to do. And then when we do the missed approach, we'll talk about that. Might as well talk about the procedure for it as well before we get going. So the missed approach is a really busy procedure. Things happen pretty fast, and it's usually flying big jets or these type of jets. It's usually something that's challenging, for a little bit more challenging, because you're going from that approach mode, adding lots of power, especially in this jet. It has tons of power, and things happen pretty fast. So you got to kind of develop your procedure for it and practice it a few times, and then once you practice it a few times, it runs pretty smoothly. So I'll just show you the missed approach procedure here and the checklist I've been using. So basically what we do is we push toga, and then the throttles are going to go to takeoff. So you're going to see takeoff enunciated up here, and then your pitch attitude is going to go up to 7.5 degrees. So you pitch up, and then you're going to immediately select flaps to 2, and then when you start accelerating, you're going to get your gear. Once you've got positive rate, you're going to get your gear up, and climb speed via approach minimum, you can start selecting your flaps up. Now, because we're going to stay in the circuit, I'm only going to go to flaps 1, and we're going to only go to 200 knots. So the flaps 1 is good up to 250 knots, so that's what we're going to do. And then your throttles, I'm going to have to recycle. I'm going to set the speed to keep the speed in manual. You can go to FMS, and with flaps 1, that would set your target speed at 200 knots. But I'm going to manually set the target speed at 200 knots, leave it in manual, and then I'm going to have to, because it's going to be in takeoff, those throttles are going to be set for takeoff. I'm going to have to recycle the auto throttle in order to get the aircraft to manage that takeoff speed. So that's what we're going to, procedure we're going to do for the departure. So it's going to be pretty busy, but yeah, practice it a few times, and then you get used to it, and then it works really well in this jet. Works as I would expect it to anyway. As I said before, I'm no Citation Longitude pilot, but this update really makes this plane nice and functional, and it's a great airplane to fly. So sun's going down, so let's get taxiing out and get up on our way. Runway 7's right over here, so it's a short taxi, so let's get going. Okay, release the parking brake, and I'll bring up on our status page here, I'll bring up our pre-flight, and it's going to pass these checks as soon as we start a taxi. They'll run through those checks. So we'll add a little bit of power, get our taxi light on. So you can see it's running through those checks. Okay, as we're taxiing out, let's do our checklist here for the taxi. Or before takeoff checklist, sorry. So flaps are set for takeoff. All our status messages are good. So I'll go back to the map page on here. Having trouble staying on the taxi line. That's the difficulty in doing this with no real peripheral vision. You only have what you're looking at. Normally when you're doing kind of taxiing in a real plane, you kind of have your peripheral vision, so you can glance down at checklists and do those things. Okay, clear right, clear left, clear to cross. Okay, trims are set. V-speeds are set. Nav source is FMS. Speed knob, I'm going to leave it in FMS for now. And then when we select 200 when we leave it at flaps 1 for departure, it will keep 200 knots as our speed target with flaps 1 set. If you remember from the last video, the settings, you set those settings for the flap speeds. Flaps 1 was 200 knots. So we got an aircraft ahead of us. I got the FSL-TL traffic on here, so we'll see some target traffic as we're flying around. And Sunwing looks like they're departing out of Ottawa ahead of us. Okay, so the speed knob is set, crew briefing is complete, and all our ice protection is as required. So we'll just let this guy take off ahead of us, and then we'll get up on our way. Head outside and watch him head out. FSL-TL traffic is a really nice addition to the sim. For some reason, these guys always seem to taxi up like a few hundred feet and then start their takeoff instead of right from the threshold. But okay, so we're good. Let's head out onto the runway. We'll get our landing light on, taxi light off. And remember, I'm just going to leave it at flaps 1 and keep that target speed of 200 knots, which is already the target speed with the FMS, as you can see in the magenta window there on our speed tape. Okay, so we'll just give those guys a minute to get ahead of us there. Okay, I'll hit toga, get our pitch bar going. And you can see the TCAS traffic just departed ahead of us here. Just climbing through 1,600 feet. Don't see anybody coming in on final. Okay, let's get going. So advance our throttles. Set takeoff thrust. Gauge the auto throttle hold. T's and P's are good. Takeoff power set. There's V1. Rotate. 10 degrees pitch, pause the rate, gears up. Speed is good, flaps will leave 1. And through 400 feet, autopilot's on, flight level change, and nav engaged. So gears up, flaps are 1, autopilot's engaged. And we'll just continue straight ahead to 5,000 feet. We're going to hit the manual sequence point and I'll just keep tracking straight ahead. Thing climbs pretty fast. Okay, there's 4,000 for 5,000. Should be targeting 200 knots. Yeah, so with all that power, it's kind of slow. So I'm going to just recycle the auto throttle, and there we got our target speed of 200 knots. So I find if it doesn't come out of takeoff thrust, if you recycle the auto throttle, then it'll go into the appropriate speed mode, whether it's climb or whether it's whether it's FMS speed, whatever you have selected, or manual speed. But sometimes it seems to get stuck in takeoff mode. Anyway, there we are. We're leveled off. So let's just go through our after takeoff checklist. Gears up, flaps are up, throttles are set, ice protection is good, and pressurization is fine. We're only at 5,000 feet here, and we'll leave the belts on. Okay, so now we'll simulate ATC is going to take us on radar vectors, so we'll select heading select. And he'll say, oh, you cleared right heading 160. Anticipate direct to Novux for the RNAV runway 7, maintain 5,000 feet. Okay, so we are now in heading select. We're in the right turn, which is basically going to take us out here, and then we'll go direct to Novux, which is right over here, once we get clear for the approach. So let's just go through the approach briefing, landing data. So we need to go in and set that up. So we'll go to perf, landing data, weather, we'll load the METAR data. Runway is runway 7, that's good. And we're going to do flaps full, anti-ice off, reversers stowed, that's all good. Auto throttle I'll put on. And landing data, we'll accept those, and those are populated. So our landing data is good, ice protection is as required. Crew briefing will already brief the approach, so that's good. And passenger signs are still on, and so we're good. That's our approach checklist. So now ATC says you're cleared direct Novux for the RNAV runway 7. Maintain 5,000 till Novux. So I go down to my flight plan now, and I'll go down, select Novux, and I'll actually, or I could just activate the approach. So I can go direct to Novux, or I can just activate the approach as well. So if I go back to procedures, and we'll activate the approach. And there it goes, direct Novux, and then I'll select nav. So nav is selected, and off we go to Novux. So our speed's good, we're at 200 knots, we're in FMS mode, and now we're going to do the approach. So what I'm going to do is the initial altitude is at 5,000 feet, max 210, and then I'm going to select VNAV, and I'm going to select 1,700 feet as my final altitude. So it'll fly the initial portion of the approach in VNAV, and then once I've passed Novux, I can arm the approach, and then as soon as it picks up the glide path, it will fly the glide path for the remainder of the approach. And if it doesn't get it by a Mobi here, then it will level off at that altitude till it picks up the glide path. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to set 1,700 feet, so we're cleared for the approach. So I set 1,700 feet in the altitude window, and it's not going to descend. I'm just going to arm VNAV. VNAV path is going to become armed, and then it's going to, once it passes that fix, and you can see the restriction here at Novux, 5,000 feet, and then you have our rest of our restrictions for the approach. ULAGU at 4,500 above, and then MEBEP at 2,300 above. It's going to follow those VNAV profiles until we get to the FAF, and then we'll once we pass Novux, we'll arm the approach, and as soon as it picks up the glide path, it will continue along the approach. So that is it for the setup for the approach. We're all good to go. Just take a quick look outside and see the scenery here in Ottawa. Ottawa is a beautiful city if you ever get a chance to visit. Nice city up on the Ottawa River up here. We're capital city of Canada. The airport's just southwest of the city there. Anyway, nice winter day here. So you remember we're in FMC speed, and when we start the approach, I'll use FMS speed. And if you remember from the settings, so if I go back to aircraft systems, or no, sorry, perf data, and flap speeds. So we're at flap 1, so that's where it gets that 200 knots from. If you put the gear down, it's going to go to 200 knots, and when I select flap 2, it's going to go to 160. When I select flaps 1, it's going to go to 140. Those are the defaults. And then when I get on final, prior to 1,000 feet, I'm going to go to manual, and then I'm going to target my approach speed, which is 131. And then I'll be in manual when we do the go-around. And just to review the go-around procedure, it's going to be hit toga. You're going to see the takeoff armed in your, it's going to go takeoff here in your auto throttle portion of your flight mode enunciator. And then pitch attitude up to 7.5 degrees. So we're going to pitch up. Pause rate gear is going to go up. Flaps 2 automatically right away. Flaps we're only going to go, once we're above approach plus 10, we can go all the way to up, but we're only going to go to flaps 1. And then we're going to adjust our speed knob, set our speed of 200 knots for the missed approach. And then throttles, if it still says takeoff, I'm going to cycle the autopilot or auto throttle, and then it should go back to speed, whatever I have set for the manual speed. So that's the procedure we're going to use for the missed approach. So we're just coming up to Vovux here. And the next approach we're going to do is the ILS approach. And that one's pretty easy. We'll just get on vectors downwind, and we're going to activate vectors to final for the ILS approach. Should have lots of time downwind to brief that. So this is a great way to practice approaches. Is just set your departure and destination at the same airport, and just do you can just do a runway heading departure to a certain altitude, and then off you go. Do as many approaches as you want. So you can see our top of descent coming up, and then it's going to start that VNAV path, should capture. So VPath is captured now, and you can see it's starting to descend, and it's going to go down to the selected altitude of 1,700 feet if we don't do anything else. But now I can also arm the approach, and you can see the approach is armed, and the glide path is now active or armed as well. So you can see the glide path just up here. As soon as that comes within range and captures, then now we're on the RNP portion of the approach. And we're good to go, right to minimums. The minimums I need to still put in my minimums for this are 769, so we do that over here. So I can go down to minimums, 769, and we'll do the approach right at minimum. So there's our minimum, 769. No temperature correction required today. So this plane really flies these RNP approaches really nicely. Like, these curve segments are perfect. PMDG doesn't have that figured out yet for their FMS. They put in these radius of fixed turns, but they're not there for every approach. But every approach I've tried in RNP, every RNP approach I've tried with these curved radius of turn fixes are perfect in this airplane. So if I want to slow down now to 160, so I'll select flaps 2. I'm in FMS mode, so it's going to target 160. Boy, sure got dark here quick in Ottawa. You can see the runway coming up to the right there. So before the FAF, I want to be fully configured. And again, our missed approach is straight ahead to Tefley up to 3,000 feet. So I need to get that in my window as well before so as soon as I capture the glide path, then I can change this altitude. So I'm just going to set my heading bug on 071. Now for the go around, it helps if you have auto throttle and autopilot buttons mapped to your joystick, which I do, because the auto throttle button is down here, and trying to reach down here to engage it when the throttles are moving like this is difficult. And it's a lot easier to engage the auto throttle if you have it set up on a button than having to reach up here while the plane is moving around. So I really recommend you put at least those 2 buttons for this aircraft somewhere on your throttle quadrant or on your joystick to be able to activate those when you need to. Okay, so I'm going to get gear down. flaps full, and the speed will now target 140. And at this point I will go manual, and then I'll set the approach target speed of 131. And we'll do our landing checklists. Gear is down, 3 green, flaps are full, lights are as required, speed brake is retracted, and auto ground spoilers are normal. Okay, so we are good to go. So you remember for the go around, as soon as we hit minimums, it's going to hit the toga button. That's another button I have mapped to my joystick, toga, and that will set the auto throttle to takeoff mode, and then give me a pitch command of takeoff as well, which is, or for go around, which will be 7.5 degrees. And then immediately select flaps 2, and then once we have positive rate, it'll be gear up, and once we're above rep plus 10, it will be flaps to 1. So the glide path is captured now, so I will set my altitude to 3,000 feet. So missed approach altitude is set. So since we're going to do the go around, I'll stay more focused on the instruments here so you can see them a little bit better. So everything looks pretty good. Through 1,000 feet, the missed approach altitude is set. There's our missed approach altitude there, or sorry, our minimums, 769. So as soon as it calls minimums, I'll hit toga. There's minimums, toga, autopilot disengages. Okay, flaps to 2. Set my pitch attitude, positive rate, gear is coming up. Speed is accelerating, going to flaps 1. And then I'll get my autopilot on. Flight level change, set my speed target of 200. And then I'll recycle the flight director to climb and target flight level change 200. So we're tracking FMS, autopilot, auto throttle engaged, flight level change, speed's 200, and we're in climb mode up to 3,000 feet. 2,000 for 3,000. Get our post takeoff check. Gear is up. Flaps are 1. And auto throttle is set, speed 200 knots. So you see it happens pretty fast. And even though I've done lots of go-arounds and lots of airplanes, not having flown this airplane, I had to do quite a few just to practice to get the procedure down. Because I, like I said, I'm not a longitude pilot, so I don't know if it's 100% correct, but it works. It's working for me, and I think it could work for you too if you kind of follow that procedure. So now we're level. Altitude is acquired 3,000 feet, and we'll just check in with the departure controller, and then he'll give us radar vectors downwind for the ILS for the next approach. So let's say we just checked in, and he's going to say, Roger, your radar identified 3,000, maintain 3,000, turn right, heading 160, radar vectors for the ILS, runway 7. So I will select heading select, turn my heading to 160, and yeah, and then we'll go now and we'll load up the approach for the ILS. So we go down to approach. So you see we still have the RNAV in here. So now we need to go select the ILS approach. And we're going to do it by vectors. And the minimums for that approach is 573. So we'll put that in. Minimums 573. And since we're on radar vectors already, we can activate we can load and activate that approach, which is vectors to final. So we'll load and activate it until it's not approved for GPS. That's fine. And then you can see it automatically puts in the localizer for that approach. And if I cursor out, you can see there we got Visol, and we'll brief the approach as we go downwind here. So the approach is automatically loaded in. And now we're going to continue on vectors. So we're looking for a downwind heading of 250. So we'll continue right heading 250. And so that's going to be taking us for downwind. So now I'm going to double check that the frequencies are good. So the approach is 109.5, and that's not identified yet. Probably when we get closer to downwind, it should identified. And our course is going to be 071. So we'll check into that when we get a little further. Okay, so we're downwind. So we need to dial in the course of 071. If it doesn't dial that in for us automatically, it should though, because we've activated the approach. And we'll just go back and double check that again. So procedure, activate vectors to final. Yep, so that's good. And we're downwind. Oh, had a little weather blip there. Okay, so let's brief the approach. So we're on vectors for the ILS runway 7. The course is the localizer is 109.5. We checked that. We need to put the course of 071 in. Crossing the FAF, Mobi at 1,700 feet. Decision altitude is 573. We've entered that. Airport elevation is 377. Missed approach is straight ahead to the Ottawa beacon, 3,000 feet. And yeah, so that's the approach. So we're all set up for that. And he'll take us downwind, just past the Mobi, and then take us on to radar vectors for the approach. So we got the frequency 109.5, and it hasn't identified it yet, but what we can do is we can put our course in manually. So usually it puts us in automatically when I load and activate these approaches. For some reason it didn't, but we'll just do it ourselves. So the localizer is, course is dialed in, and it still hasn't identified it. That might be why. Got another wind bump here. Okay, so you see right now we're on the it's radar vectors to the FAF of a Mobi, 1,700 or above. Okay, so there we have IOW now identified, so that's good. And we have the course set, so everything is looking good for the ILS. So he'll take us out to about Visol, turn us in, and then we'll just intercept the approach from there. And what I'll do on this, I'll just do one more missed approach, and then we'll finish the video there just to show you. So on this missed approach, because we're in localizer mode, it should automatically transition to, once we hit Toga, we go past the missed approach point, it should automatically cycle to FMS, but if it doesn't, then we'll have to cycle FMS up here. And on this one, I'm going to select FMS speed as the speed controlling function. So I'm not going to use the speed window. I'm going to, once we do the initial gear up, flaps to 1, then I'll set FMS speed. It should target FMS speed. I'll recycle the auto throttle, and then it should target the speed based on the flap setting of 1. So just coming up by a Visol. We'll turn inbound and then turn on an intercept course, and then off we go for the approach. So I'll go back to FMS speed mode now, and then you'll see it changes to magenta here. I'll go back to manual, it goes to green, which is the targeted speed. So I'll go back to FMS. So now, because we have flaps 1, it's targeted at 200 knots. And then now when I select the flap settings, it's going to go to the selected flap speeds. Or I could leave it a manual and do it manually myself. Okay, so now we'll say turn right heading 340. base leg. Oh, we got some other traffic coming in to the other side there. See him yet? Oh, we're right here. Okay, so we'll make a first turn to final. Turn right heading 030. Upon interception, clear the ILS runway 7. So I'll arm the approach. You see localizer glide slope are armed. See our glide slope coming up there. And I'm going to select flaps 2, and our speed will come back to 160. We're looking for that traffic. Looks like he's going on a downwind the other way. Might be in the cloud. Okay, here comes the localizers captured. Glide slope's coming in, I'll go gear down. Set my heading of 071. Okay, we'll go flaps full. Target speed 140. I'll bring it to manual and manually target 130 now. Okay, approach speed is target set. We'll do our landing checklist. So landing data is confirmed. This approach checklist landing data is confirmed. Ice protection is good, and belts are on. Landing checklist gear is down. 3 green. Flaps are full. Speed brake is down and armed, and cast check. Landing checklist is good. We do have one guy cutting in on us here, or is he landed on the other rung? No, I'm not sure where he's going. This might give us an opportunity to go around for traffic. Don't even see him on TCAS here. Nothing on our traffic. Okay, so we have our misapproach altitude set. So on this one, we'll hit toga again, pitch up, flaps 2, pause rate, gear up. Once we're approach plus 10, we'll get flaps 1. And then if it doesn't automatically go to FMS, we'll have to select FMS down here. And then we'll gauge nav and autopilot and continue up to 3,000 on the track to Ottawa. And you can see the track. There's our misapproach track, and there's our hold at the Ottawa beacon. Yeah, it looks like that traffic just landed ahead of us there, so hopefully it clears off the runway, but we're going to be doing a go around anyway. And then when you go around from this approach, you can do the same thing. You can set up for another ILS, or you can reload the RNAV approach and go back to the fix, or you can pick any approach you want. You can go to another runway. You can go vectors to the left, and no, probably the winds are kind of out of this direction, so probably go vectors to the right. You can try approach on 32 if you want. So it's a great way to practice your approaches, missed approaches, by basically staying in the circuit at a local airport. Okay, 1,000 feet, misapproach altitude set. There's our misapproach point at 573. Well, it looks like that traffic just took off. And we'll hit toga again at minimums. There's minimums, toga, flaps 2, pause, set our pitch, got our positive rate, gears up, speed is accelerating, flaps 1, sorry. And you can see it's automatically gone to FMS, and I'm going to gauge the autopilot now, flight level change, and I'll set FMS speed over here, and then I'll recycle the flight director, and we're back to climb, targeting flight level change 200 knots. There's our 200 knot speed. So gear is up, flaps are 1, post takeoff check is good, and we're 2,000 for 3,000, tracking the FMS, maintaining 200 knots, and we'll level off at 3,000 feet. And we'll go to the Ottawa beacon, and if we have nothing further by the Ottawa beacon, it should go right into the hold for us here. So you see it's sequenced from the this approach point now is going to the Ottawa beacon, and the hold is published there. So we'll just let it enter the hold, and then you can stay in the hold, and then from there you can set up for another approach. So once we're entered the hold, I'll just call that the end of this video. No need to go around and watch me land. I still haven't got my landings down that great in this airplane, especially at nighttime. So I hope you enjoyed the video. It's a great way to practice approaches, missed approaches in this aircraft. Like I said, the FMC works really well in this airplane. The autopilot works really well. It just takes practice getting used to the systems. Like I said, I'm not a longitude pilot, but practice makes you get better at flying these airplanes. So if you enjoyed the video, appreciate it if you hit that like button, hit the share, subscribe, ring that bell, sign up for notifications, and then you'll see the next video I put out. I think for the next one, for the Citation Longitude, I'll wait till they get the final release of the avionics and aircraft update 1 later this month, and we'll see how that, if there's any major changes in that. Otherwise, I think for the next video, I might look at flying the King Air, the Black Square Analog King Air, or the Cessna Chancellor 414. Both great airplanes, and yeah, both a lot of fun to fly. And they're coming out with New Zealand, so I think I'd like to do some flights in New Zealand as well. So if you'd like to join me, make sure you sign up for notifications, and then you'll see that video when it comes out, hopefully in a week or so. There we go, we're in the hold. Again, thanks for joining me. Hope you enjoyed this short video, a short little flight in the Citation. It's an awesome airplane. Hope you enjoy flying it, and I think it's only going to get better even with the updates as they come out in the near future. Okay, thanks again, and we'll see you next time on the Bandit Flight Simmer channel. Bandit out.